Hey guys, it's Drew. Thank you for checking out the Sober Fix podcast, where we talk about addiction and living life sober, one day at a time. If you like what you hear, go ahead and follow us. And if you get some time, check out our Instagram page at the Sober Fix podcast, and also our YouTube and TikTok at the Sober Fix. Hope you enjoy the episode. What's up, everybody? Thank you for checking out another episode of the Sober Fix podcast. This is Drew, and it is nice to be on here. It's nice to be recording. Been doing some fun stuff. Website is up. Been doing a bunch of networking with people really almost all over the world that are in recovery, have battled addiction. It's amazing nowadays with technology, and everyone's fighting addiction. Not everyone, but every country, every area has people inside of it that are fighting addiction, that are fighting some type of mental health fight. And I think that, the universal thing across the board, doesn't matter which recovery program you take part in, doesn't matter if you're trying to do it on your own, doesn't matter if you were just trying to make some slight changes to your life, some big changes to your life. Universally, I think most people can agree, you need support. I tried for so long to get sober on my own. I'm not sure why, but I just wanted to figure it out on my own. I wanted to find a way to better my life, to just improve the quality of my life, because alcohol and drugs had been taking it away from me slowly and quickly at times ever since I started. I had no idea that was going to happen when I first started. None of us do. You couldn't even sit us down and say, look, this is what's going to happen. There's no way. I just couldn't have heard it. And it's like the people that end up on the hard stuff, I had no idea it was going to end up on stuff like that. A couple years before I started, if you would have even mentioned the hardcore opiates or some of the harder drugs that I eventually would try, if you would have even talked about it in front of me, I would have said, whoa, no way. That stuff's crazy. We've always learned about that. Stay away from that. That stuff will ruin your life. It'll get you arrested. It'll cause problems in your relationship. That is a quick way to just destroy your life. And most people don't just wake up one day and say, look, I want to get into opiates. A lot of times there is a progression. For me, it happened so quickly. I remember when I first started drinking and smoking weed, and I remember having problems even with the weed. And marijuana never got me in a whole lot of as much trouble, at least. It got me in some trouble, but it didn't get me in as much trouble as the harder stuff did. It wasn't a felony all the time carrying it around. Most of the time, it made me sleepy, a little bit tired. I have nothing against marijuana. I think it has some amazing medical uses. I think for a lot of people that enjoy it and smoke it does some amazing things for them. It helps them relax. It helps with glaucoma. It helps with a variety of different things. I know it helps even in, I believe it's teenagers for seizures and certain things going on, that it helps a ton of people. So I'm not in no way am I anti any of that stuff. I'm not against it. I don't tell people they shouldn't be doing it. I just know for me as an addict alcoholic, I tried to go that route. And I said, look, let's put the opiates down. And the alcohol got me a couple DUIs. I said, I need to put that down. I get sloppy on that stuff. I black out. I make bad decisions. I end up driving. I totaled a car once and knocked over a light pole when I was 18. Then continued to drive in a blackout multiple miles as the security guard was following me, who had seen me hit the light pole. I have kind of flashbacks of that event. I don't remember 97% of it, but I do vaguely remember driving on the street, and one of the tires was blown out and it was just on rim, and I remember, like, having to hold the steering wheel really hard because it was just moving so much as the rim just grinded on the asphalt. And I did stupid things like that, and I thought, "Maybe I could just smoke weed. Not too much wrong with it, not gonna get me in too much trouble, doesn't make me go crazy, doesn't make me black out, less likely of getting a DUI." At least that's what I thought. And here's how that would play out. I'd be smoking on the weekends, then it would kind of dabble into weekdays. Then it was every day after work. Then it was before and after work. Then it was on my lunch breaks. Now I'm going to the clinic, the marijuana clinic, and I am buying all sorts of edibles, mini hash oil Twinkies, brownies. I remember working at a hospital for 3.5 years, walking around eating brownies all the time, and still smoking on the breaks. Pretty soon, I am just high 24/7 on this weed. And it just turns into the same kind of thing for me. Next thing you know, I don't feel like doing anything unless I smoke first. I don't want to go to the movies without smoking. I don't want to work out without smoking. I don't want to work. I don't want to do anything without smoking. And it's interesting because I start spending a lot of money on it too. Because not really that cheap. It's cheaper than some of the harder drugs or the pills. But I was finding a way to spend a bunch of money on that as well. And here's what I noticed for me. As an addict who was on harder stuff and who abused alcohol and who really abuses anything, any type of substance. I've mentioned it before. I'll do stuff I don't even really like the high, but I'll do it because I'm always chasing some kind of fix. I'm always chasing numbing out. I'm always chasing this idea of relaxing, of stress free, of trying to feel good all the time, even though I know now that's just not reality. It's not how life works. But I was always chasing that. And I noticed that as time goes on and I'm smoking the weed every day and I'm eating those brownies and everything I do during the day, all of my activities revolves around me smoking the weed. Eventually, it's just not quite enough. And there's been times where I've gone 6 months and then felt it wasn't enough, and there's times where I've gone 2 months and felt, "You know what? This is just not enough." And I'm not fully sober anyway, so I'm not off everything. And I'm chasing a high that's been good for a little bit, but it's just not quite cutting it anymore. I might as well do what I really want to do. That's when I start dabbling into the pills. And once I eventually get hold of an opiate pill and I feel that high of being on the opiates, it's a wrap. I am back on the hardest stuff, and there's just no going back. And it hooks me. It hooks me so quick. And and during this time, I think I have some control over this. And I will replay in my head, you know what? You just made it 2 months or you just made it 6 months just smoking weed. Like, that somehow gives me, like, credit or somehow gives me the ability to, like, control stuff more. I was always trying to have control. And the thing for me, and I think it's true for most alcoholics, addicts, is sometimes the progression of our using happens so quickly, it almost flies under the radar. And you think, oh my gosh, how did I dive so deeply into this again? That's what happened to me, at least in the beginning. It's like I started drinking, I started smoking the weed, I started eating the edibles, I started messing around with cocaine here and there, started doing ecstasy here and there, started doing stuff that I didn't really like. They weren't really my substance of choice. And I think because of that, that was the only reason why I was able to cast them aside when I didn't really feel like doing them much anymore. But once I got on the opiates, I lost all choice. Like that was it. Hooked. And I think I had this false confidence using the substances that weren't really my substance of choice for a little bit and having the ability to be able to put them down as thinking, you know what, I'll do the same thing with these pills. And I remember I was a year in of using the opiates. I was a year in before I even knew what withdrawals were. And I remember I was at the gym and I had got this new pre-workout drink. And I remember working out at the gym and I was doing some type of kind of bench press machine. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I'm kind of like stopping in between the sets and I'm going, man, I just feel kind of weird. I feel all kind of like sore and like kind of cold, almost like fever like, feeling kind of cold, and my lower back hurts. I definitely noticed some like heightened anxiety, just felt off. Couldn't really pinpoint it. It was a little bit different than anything I had ever experienced being sick before. It was like almost like mild flu at that time, but it had this weird like anxiety and mental component to it as well that I just could not quite explain and had not fully experienced before. I remember walking out of the gym after that workout. I remember going into my car and I had some of the opiate stuff in my car and I remember smoking it. I remember taking like 2 or 3 hits of it. And instantly on the 3rd one, I felt that weird feeling, that weird minor flu symptom type stuff, and the anxiety just flowed away instantly. I thought, "Ooh, that's not good." Like, I didn't know what withdrawals were, wasn't quite sure what was going on with me, but I somehow knew that it was linked to those drugs. That's when I went home, I started researching online, and I learned what opiate withdrawals were. And I was a year in of using it pretty much daily at that point. Like, I had finally built a tolerance enough to start feeling that. And once you start feeling that as an opiate user, or even anything else, Xanax, alcohol, once you start feeling the physical withdrawals, you start to lose a lot of power in the situation. Like any control that you think you once may have had, or maybe that you did have in the beginning, it's gone. Now you're not just doing stuff because you want to. You're not just drinking because you want to. You're not smoking other stuff just because you want to. Your body literally is craving it. And this is how people get so far along, especially with the opiates. Because an outsider looking in goes, how does he keep doing this? How does he not realize like he looks terrible physically? How does he not realize his life is just going down the tubes? Like, can't he see that all these goals he had of like school and working is just going out the window? Like, I thought he was into that relationship. Like, why does he seem like he doesn't care at all? Like, what's going on with him? He used to be a somewhat reliable person, and he's a pretty talkative guy. Like, he used to call me, and he won't even answer my calls anymore. He won't answer texts. He responds back days later. He's supposed to show up somewhere. He doesn't. Not only does he not show up, he doesn't even text. He doesn't even bother calling. Like, complete character change, personality shift for the worse. And you are just stuck in it. And then things start to go by really fast because now you got the magnifying glass on your next high, and everything else seems to kind of just not matter as much anymore. And you don't mean to, you're not trying to hurt people's feelings, you're not trying to destroy your life. You are stuck. And that can go on for a long time. And I could see how family members look at the person who is suffering and they just cannot understand because they go, "How are you so different? How have you changed so drastically and so fast? How has this happened? Like, you are not even the same person. And how do you enjoy this? You know how bad this is for your life. How are you enjoying this?" But the thing is like they're not. They are caught up. They are stuck. They are trapped. They are in the addiction cage. They definitely made some choices consciously in the beginning that led them down the path. They play a part in all this. But you reach a point where it just becomes out of your control. And it's a scary thing because there's a lot of people that just do not make it out of that. Like, I don't know if it's luck, I don't know what it is, but just somehow some people survive, some don't. But the problem is once you're stuck like that, like, you could die at any time, especially nowadays with the fentanyl stuff. That stuff is not a joke, it is not a game, it is brutal. You get stuck on that, you are on it. And the wreckage, I mean, there were so many things, there were so many lies that I had to tell, there was so many illegal stuff that I had to take part in. I mean, just every day to chase that high, I was holding on to something that was illegal, and at any time you could go to jail and get in trouble, and you just rack up this wreckage and burn trust so fast. And the thing is, you're so kind of numb to the world and kind of blind to all of it. You don't even see. Like, it really took me about like a year of being out of addiction, getting my head clear, having things kind of balance out in my brain. And I wasn't like fixed at a year. Still not fixed. There's still a lot of things that I have to do to maintain my recovery. I had so much growth that I had to do. I started doing all this stuff at 17, 18, stunted my growth in so many areas of my life, mentally, just so emotionally, so many different things that I had to start working on. But as I started to look back, it was really about a year when I started to realize just how much of an effect I was having on other people. And I really started to notice it once I was in recovery and I was meeting other people that were sober and I was seeing them go out every once in a while. And you would meet this super cool person that was super passionate about recovery and wanted to change their life and was trying to reach out to a bunch of other people and say, "Hey, look, I was in hell just like you are on addiction. I found a way out. This is what I'm doing to stay sober. You call me anytime. I will talk to you anytime." Like, people that were so gung ho about recovery and were so happy to have turned their life around and so grateful to be out of addiction. But sometimes it gets us. Like, I am fully aware that any of us in recovery, if we start getting super laxed about things, if we forget how bad it was out there, if we start to get overconfident about our situation and think that we have done enough work to where we are good to go, can get pulled back in. And I would witness that. And I would witness these friends that I got to know in a treatment center or a sober living or meetings outside of a treatment center. And I'd see them go back and I'd be in contact with them. And you just see how quickly they get pulled back into it. That's what scares me. That's why I'm very vigilant about my recovery program. And I also realize that it does not matter how long you have been sober, how long you have been in recovery, how much hurt you were in when you decided to put the drugs down. We still are always a bad day, a bad decision away from going back there and getting hooked on it quick again. And that's a scary thing at first, but I think a little bit of that fear is healthy. I think a little bit of it is healthy. And I think what kind of keeps me, I have to remember to, I just have to remember how bad it was out there. I have to. That's why I love getting to work with people that are new in sobriety and trying to give them some hope and saying, look, you can do this. You can turn your life around. And all those things that you've been through are going to help you relate to other people. It's easier for me now to kind of stay sober now that my head is cleared and I have a little bit of time separated from the drugs and alcohol. But I see it now. I see how much it really affected me. And when I look back, it's such a blur almost because it happened so fast. Like I felt like I had control over the first like year and a half when I was like deciding to get high or deciding to drink. But I also realized too, if I'm very honest with myself, that once I was about a year in, once I started to feel those withdrawals, that's when things changed. That's when I really crossed over a line. And I spent so much time chasing drugs and alcohol just to feel okay, like less than I feel right now sober. Like the power and magic in them, it started to disappear. And it's kind of when you realize not only are you in big trouble, but you start to think, like, I don't know. I don't see how I'm going to sustain this. Like, I really can't picture my life going any further as I continue to drink and use. But I also can't picture life without it. Like, I know how much pain it has brought me. I know how it has negatively affected every area of my life, but it's in some way it's kind of familiar. Like I know it's going to be bad, but I could temporarily get high and now and worry about it later. And I remember just thinking like when I reach this point where I can't picture with it, I can't picture life without it. Sobriety seems scary at that point. It's like I know I'm in so much pain and I know I need change, but how am I going to do this sober? As someone who has constantly always turned to something to cope with life and to try and have this idea of feeling okay, and someone who has always tried to control how I feel and has always been in the pursuit of feeling good all the time, how am I going to live life without it? I just didn't even know where to start. I looked to the left and I just saw, oh no, I have just burnt so many bridges and trust, and I have ruined my record. And my whole adult life, I've had a hard time getting a job. and I owe so much money, and my credit score is shot, and I was always failing out of school. What am I going to do? How am I going to be able to stay sober? But the fear for me was really the emotional stuff. Because by the time I really got off of everything and kind of transitioned into early sobriety, I needed help. My emotions were so out of whack. It was uncomfortable to be happy. It was terrible to feel sad. I felt like I was on an emotional roller coaster all the time. My depression was terrible. It took me a long time for my depression to get better. I had anxiety all the time. Sobriety felt so uncomfortable, and that's really what the problem is for me. I was so focused on the drugs. Oh, it's the opiates, it's the hard stuff. Oh, it's the marijuana. Oh, it's the coke. Oh, it's this, it's that. I'm doing too much of it. I'm doing it too often. I was so focused all on that stuff. And what I failed to realize was the whole time, and what kind of brought me to all this stuff in the beginning, and the sole focus of what was really going on was just that it wasn't about the substances. It was about sobriety. I felt uncomfortable sober. And I could never get sober long enough to start to feel better. My idea of what sobriety was really me coming off of everything. I never gave myself enough time for my brain to kind of level out, for my serotonin to boost up a little bit and get a little bit better, for me to start feeling endorphins again, for me to start building up dopamine again. I never gave myself enough time. I was always feeling withdrawal symptoms or kind of lingering withdrawal stuff and saying, "Oh, this is sobriety. I hate it. I'm uncomfortable. I need to dodge this with everything I can." Yes, I know I'm going to get in trouble. I know I'm going to get the same results I've been having for years, but I just can't stand it. I just can't do it. And the first thing that kind of started to give me hope was like looking at other people, especially friends that I knew that I was using with, that kind of fell off and you wouldn't see them for a while. And eventually you run into them and they'd be sober. That's what really started to give me a lot of hope. And it's interesting because you never know who's going to give you hope. I mean, we kind of expect it to be like the people that have been sober for like 30 years, have all this wisdom and experience, are just going to tell us, like, hey, look, this is how you do it. But you never know. Sometimes it's from your buddy who you've been getting high with for years that all of a sudden it disappears, ghosts everyone, maybe goes to treatment, finds a way to break away from all the negativity and the chaos and the drama and the stress. Next thing you know, you see him 6 months, a year, whatever it is later, and you go, oh my God, never seen this guy sober. Never known him to be sober. Wow, he looks so much better. Oh, he's talking different. He's just lit up. There's something about him. And it makes you think because you go, man, this person was as bad as I was. And I have always believed that I don't have it in me to ever be able to get sober. And I pretty much never thought he would get sober either. And here he is. That's like the most powerful example of hope. And it doesn't always come from the person that has a ton of years. It just doesn't. I hear stuff every once in a while in meetings from someone who's brand new that just says something that just hits me to my core, and I go, man, just reminds me of just how hard it is. Because I forget I was someone that struggled to get sober for so many years. And now that life has been so good for almost 4.5 years, and it's just been so drastically different and just so good compared to what it was. That's why I feel like I always have good days, is because I'm always comparing it to what it was like before. Could always be worse. And I think that's a good way to kind of go about life, is When things are hard, it could always be worse. And to just hold on to the gratitude of like, what is working out today? I'm lucky for another chance, lucky to be alive today, lucky to have a support network, lucky to have a recovery program, lucky to have an opportunity to battle the things that I am battling, lucky to be coherent, free, above ground, and in a time where there was so much technology and opportunity to branch out and meet other people that are in recovery or dealing with mental health stuff or just trying to better their life. So much information at our hands with a click of a mouse that we can find, so much support we can find, so many things that we can look into and ways to kind of improve our life or figure out how we're going to do things just a little bit better today than we did yesterday. But it just started to get better. It's all started with seeds of hope from other people. And I thought, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, I could try something different this time. Like, what do I have to lose? I know what going down the same route is going to get me. I know what it's going to get me. It's the same thing every time. I love how the AA program talks about jails, institutions, death. And you could be not about the AA program. You could be about NA. You could be anti all of it. You could go to church. It doesn't matter. Whatever your thing is to stay sober, whatever way works for you. Let's say you're battling depression or gambling or whatever it is. If you have found a way to improve your life and kind of stay away from all the negative things that maybe you were once taking part in, that's amazing. If you found a way to do that, that is amazing. And I started to kind of, I don't know, I kind of just had surrendered. I said, look, the other way, I know what I'm going to get. Like AA says, jails, institutions, and death. But I didn't believe that at first until I went to jail. And I didn't believe the thing about institutions until I started losing my mind on the uppers and started hearing stuff. And I thought, oh, I easily could have gone to an institution. And I didn't think the death part either because I was overconfident. And like I've talked about in other episodes, when I had my overdose and did die, it was like, whoa. Like they told me these were the three options, and I have now experienced two out of the three, and for sure should have experienced the mental house at times. For sure. And I started to just think, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to try it. Like, I always think I have a better answer. I always think I have a better way. I always want to do things on my own. I always want to show people that I could figure this out, but I never do. I never figure it out. I'm just going to try this. And I don't care how uncomfortable I get in the process. I'm going to finally try some things that people have been suggesting. And it started to work. And I started to love the different results out of life. To finally wake up and not having to like reach for a drink or other stuff like right off the bat. To be able to actually go about my day and not have the sole focus be chasing something, and something that I never really ever could catch at the end. To not be stuck in all of the lies and the deception and the delusion and the fear and the regret and the shame. Like, to just not be wallowing in my own self-pity, to not be stuck living in the past, replaying everything I had messed up, to not be in fear of the future. When am I going to mess this up? How am I ever going to live sober? I don't think I could ever do this. All the self-doubt. Like, to not be experiencing that even for a little bit in the beginning, and to just realize that, like, look, I'm never gonna have this fully figured out. I'm never gonna do recovery perfect. I'm never gonna really do anything perfect. All I can really do is just continue to put an effort in each day. And I just started to open up just a little bit more, and I started to realize that I just don't have the answers. And today, the longer I'm sober today, I realize I'm always gonna be on this journey. It's not there's no destination. It is the journey. The journey in recovery, the journey in life that has ups and downs, and we're all just dealing with something and trying to figure out how we're gonna navigate the next thing and just make our quality of life just a little bit better. And the cool thing is like everyone has something that they are trying to improve in their life. Everyone does. It gets bigger than just people that are in recovery. That's what I found too, just from like networking and talking to people is maybe one person's battling addiction, the other person is battling something else. But it's all about just finding, just accepting it, recognizing, look, I want to change this, and then trying to take some steps to make that change. And then after the change is made, continuing to put some consistent work in to maintain that change. Because I was someone that would get sober for a little bit, but I didn't have any follow through. I didn't have any maintenance program. I didn't have anything to. I would I would start a change, but I wouldn't finish it off. And I've found today, if I want to stay sober, there's some things I have to continue to do. If I want to enjoy this journey, if I want to not forget about how bad it was, if I want to make sure I do not get pulled back into that cage of addiction, if I want to make sure I don't get pulled in to that place in life where I am running on autopilot, causing nothing but destruction, have no control over it, and am just in that fast forward state, like I talked about earlier, where you're stuck and people are going, dude, you're so lost, trying to pull you out, but you just can't even help yourself until you finally can see how bad it is. If I want to avoid that place, I have to continue to be moving forward. I have to continue moving forward a day at a time, continuing trying to learn, continuing to practice humility, continuing to practice acceptance, and continuing to just take some actions that maybe even still I don't even agree with or that I don't feel like doing some days. But just realizing, look, I'm never fixed. Like I have to continue to work hard at this. If I want to live a content life in recovery, I have to always be moving forward. All right, you made it through another episode. Thanks again, and if you'd like to collaborate or come on the show, please email me at thesoberfixpodcast@gmail.com. Have a great day.